Jason Gilbo here at Jacob11, taking a look at tonight's 5-game slate. Keep an eye on weather in Atlanta and St. Louis. Looking risky here early on in the day. It's getting about 11:30 Eastern time, so keep an eye on that one as the day goes on. Looking at some GPP bats here. Throughout the podcast here, I mean, Boston and Baltimore is going to be chalky tonight with the two pitchers on the mound. We'll talk about those players, but they definitely will draw some ownership, but the upside is going to be there for a lot of guys. So we'll talk some contrarian picks as well. At catcher, I mean, it's definitely one of the poor positions it kind of has been over the last few days. Looking at guys to use, I mean, Baltimore, Boston, you can certainly look that way. I mean, Caleb Joseph, Sandy Leon are two guys you can consider here tonight. I definitely don't mind them. Great matchups against Kendrick and Tyler Wilson, both struggling right-handers, capable of really hanging the bigs. So I'm definitely on par with that. Going to be probably maybe popular. I mean, kind of hard to tell with probably a lot of guys wanted to use other players from that game. So looking at Mike Zunino, 2,100 on FanDuel. I mean, pump price on both sides, really. Against Alex Meyer, I don't mind, who's a lot of 324 woba to righties. Zunino, 258 ISO against right-handers going back to last year. He would be a fine pump play, probably draw some ownership out there in a bigger ballpark. I like the Mariners bats quite a bit. So, if things play, it's kind of hard to look at guys like Yadier Molina, Jet Bandy, Manny Pena. I mean, not really tremendously thrilled with those names against the pitching. But, I mean, they would be considered options as well. First base, if this game plays, Freddie Freeman, obviously a high upside guy, because I think you're going to look at Hanley and Chris Davis as kind of being the chalkier options. If St. Louis plays, Matt Carpenter, usually a guy I don't like on fuller slates, but smaller slates I don't mind going that way. Chase Anderson, 1.43 home runs per 9 to lefties going back to last year. I don't think a lot of people are going to be looking at Carpenter just because they're kind of anti-Carpenter at first base, and definitely prefer Hanley and Chris Davis, who have the tremendous upside. So those guys are definitely in play. Albert Pujols is a good against the grain stack tonight. He's definitely going to draw some ownership and get some value. Miranda is a fly ball pitcher. You look at Pujols, I mean, over a 218 ISO against lefties last year. So I'm not really picking on Miranda tonight, but if I was, it's definitely with Pujols and Trout there. So don't mind that. But Hanley, Chris Davis, I'm not going to go tremendously deep into it because it's Kyle Kendrick and Tyler Wilson in a decent ballpark. But those two are going to draw higher ownership. Chris Davis, I mean, on the cheaper side, has been struggling this year, but, we know the power that he has. Second base, Robinson Cano comes in as a top option here. Seattle bats really starting to come around. 378 woba against righties going back to last year, 262 ISO. Coming off a night with a home run. You look at Meyer, I mean, he's been hit hard by lefties going back to last year in a short time in the majors. Home runs, 1.86 runs per 9, so definitely a solid option there. D. Gordon, interesting guy tonight, just because if he gets on base, he's going to be stealing a couple. I don't expect a lot of people to go that route, but he would be an intriguing GPP guy if you're looking to be different, because I do think a lot of people are just going to jump to Cano. Definitely in play. Dustin Pedroia is certainly in play. Jonathan Scope. I mean, these guys are all going to be secondary options while, Manny Machado and those names are going to be higher owned. But Scopes and Pedroia definitely in play. We'll be looking at them quite a bit tonight. Another guy, if you want to draw lower ownership, I mean, Brandon Phillips. Zach Wheeler's not a bad arm, but you look at Phillips off to a decent start this year. 144 WRC plus against right-handed pitching. So Phillips would definitely be a lower-owned guy if you're looking to be different at second base, yet still get exposure elsewhere. I don't mind Phillips at all. Third base, Manny Machado is going to be a popular option and certainly one to look and pay up for. Obviously 353 woba against righties going back to last year, 248 ISO. Don't mind going that route here against Kendrick, who's just been awful in the minors over his last two seasons. Going back to his last year, I mean, dude had a lot of blow-ups. bad against both sides of the plate, gives up a ton of home runs. So Baltimore is going to be one of the more intriguing plays tonight. Once again, if Cardinals play, Jed Jerko, a guy I'll take a look at. Chase Anderson, reverse splits. I know he's pitching a little bit better this year. Did struggle against Atlanta. Jerko has been phenomenal this year. I mean, 184 WRC plus against righties. The power's been there. Still a cheap bet. I don't mind going that route tonight. I think outside of Machado, he's probably going to drive some higher ownership as long as that game stays in play. Kyle Seager would be an interesting spinoff of Meyer for the same reasons as Cano and Meyer's struggles against lefties so far in his career. Just because Seager hasn't really done much, hasn't shown upside, I think people are just going to gravitate towards Machado. So if you want to go for a deep pivot, making multiple lineups, I'll definitely toss some Seager in there as well. Wilmer Flores is a guy you can take a look at tonight against Garcia. Flores, tremendous against left-handed pitching, 458 WOBA, 370 ISO going back to last year. A cheap option at third base. Definitely like him a ton. Probably will draw some decent ownership, but definitely not as much as guys like Machado. So if you are looking for a cheap spinoff to pay up elsewhere, Wilmer Flores is definitely your guy. Moving over to shortstop, Gene Segura, a guy I'm looking at tonight for a pay-up option, 393 WOBA, 188 ISO against righties going back to last year. Meyer a little bit tough on righties, but still allowing a 324 WOBA. Segura, good leadoff man there. Decent run total to target, so definitely don't mind looking at Segura. Bogarts is kind of a tricky guy. I mean, not a ton of upside against right-handers. I mean, only a 144 ISO going back to last year. You can look at him. I think he's just more part of the Red Sox stack than anything else. Other than that, I'm not necessarily thrilled. Leonidas Diaz, he's kind of struggled a little bit this year, but for same reasons I like Jerko. Good power numbers against right-handers. Chase Anderson's a guy, well, was off to a decent start, struggled against the Braves. I mean, over the larger sample size, Chase Anderson is definitely a guy to pick on. And I think on a 5-game slate, you can still look at the Cardinals' bats and with some confidence as well. So J.J. Hardy would be an intriguing GPP guy because he is going to get exposure to Kyle Kendrick at a really low price, and also a low ownership in the bottom half of that lineup. I don't mind taking GPP shots with, the 6, 7, 8, 9 guys there in Boston. So he's definitely a good play for me. More to outfield, Nelson Cruz, Mike Trout, are definitely in play at top options. Mookie Betts' price on FanDuel is certainly intriguing, 3,900 up against Tyler Wilson. Betts hitting the ball hard this year, hasn't had tremendous success or shown off a lot of upside, but it's definitely coming. I'll definitely be going that route tonight. Christian Yelich is a guy I'll take a look at. I'm hoping he's kind of overlooked against Matt Andriese, who's allowed a 1.35 home runs per 9 to lefties. Yelich, absolutely superb, 388 WOBA on this going back to last year against right-handed pitching, 213 ISO. On the cheaper side as well, so I don't mind going that route and kind of building a balanced outfield. Outside of that, you can take a look here at guys like Corey Dickerson, Souza, Kiermaier in a GPP format. I don't mind that because Straley will be popular, so if you are going elsewhere, it's certainly okay. Mark Trumbo, Adam Jones, for the same reasons mentioned, are going to be very playable tonight. I don't mind going that route as well. But moving down the list, Ben Gamble's an interesting GPP guy. I talked about him on the stacking pod. Hitting the ball well, hitting second in that lineup from the left side with Mitch Haniger out. He's an intriguing option. And I think if you are looking to be really contrarian and have some upside, Stanton hasn't looked the best. He just looked absolutely silly yesterday against a lefty, which was kind of surprising to see. But still a 232 ISO going back to last year. Ceiling's high, floor's very low. I don't think a lot of people are going to go to Stanton tonight. I think a lot of people are just going to be using Cruz, Trumbo, Betts, Benintendi, those types of guys. So Stanton's going to fly under the radar, Ozuna as well. So that Marlins offense makes a good pivot away from some of those names. So that's going to wrap things up here. You can head over to DaveFantasyCafe.com for all the great tools and content.